All right. Welcome, everybody, to Boston 9/11 Truth. Today is Thursday, August 22nd, 2024. And we are very honored today to have representatives of TAP, Truth Action Project, Chuck Fall, President, and Trina Silver. Is it Silver or Silvers? I keep getting it.
Thanks, Susan. It's Silvers with an S on the end, plural.
Okay. Trina Silvers. You're the secretary, is that right?
Well, as a board member, I'm assistant secretary, and I have been acting in the role of manager for TAP for the past year and a half.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And co-founder, right?
Yes. Well, I guess I'm one of the founding members. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Chris.
So TAP has been around since what year?
2016. We actually launched in New York City at the Justice in Focus Symposium, when the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry launched.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, that's near and dear to my heart and so many others on this call. Thank you. Yeah, how time flies. So much has happened since then. But anyway, we're going to start this meeting. Our last meeting had a lot of saboteurs joining us. So we've resolved to start each meeting with some guidelines. So I'm going to read them off to you. Please, participants, abide by our guidelines. During the entire meeting, all participants are to use polite decorum and are expected to be respectful of all other participants. No personal attacks allowed. Of course, disagreement and debate are allowable as long as the content, not the person, is confronted. Voices are to be kept at a speaking level of sound, no shouting, and no one interrupts another person. The first part of our meeting is our guest speaker's presentation. The presentation is to be presented in full without interruption. We are to treat the speakers with respect, even and especially if there is a disagreement. The second part of our meeting is a Q&A of our guest speakers. Participants will be called upon in order of hand raise. All questions are to be brief, around 2 minutes, and on topic with the speaker's presentation. No off-topic questions are allowed. The on-topic requirement is in keeping with our policy of treating our speakers with respect. Any off-topic conversations, off-topic comments or questions are to be held until the final portion of our meeting, the agenda portion. But remember, this is a 9/11 Truth Group, and all topics are to have something to do with 9/11 only. Those who do not abide by these guidelines will be warned, and failure to heed the warning, that person or persons will be banned from the discussion. I'm sorry we had to go there.
We have to do what we have to do.
Yeah.
Humans.
Yeah, it was quite an exciting meeting last time with people taking over my computer and drawing whiteboard dildos and such on speakers' graphics, and it was bad. So we have to clamp down now. I apologize about that. It was not good. So anyway, everybody is familiar with the guidelines, and we again want to welcome Chuck and Trina from TAP, and take it away, Chuck and Trina.
So just one thing before you start. The first hour is devoted to our guest speakers. So just keep that in mind. And then after that, we open it up to our agenda items. So just there's a timeline here just so we don't
Right.
get too far into the evening.
Yeah, perfect. I don't really have much like a presentation per se prepared. I'm just going to talk a little bit about myself and my history with the movement and tell you all a little bit about the Truth Action Project. So it won't take me long to get through that, maybe 5 or 6 minutes. And then I plan on turning it over to Chuck then to talk further. So I'll go ahead and start, and I'll share my screen and put the website up, and that way you guys can see what I'm going to be talking about a little bit. Hi, everybody, and for those of you that don't know me here, I'm Trina Silvers, and please forgive me, but I am going to read from my notes because I don't trust myself to commit all of this to memory, and I don't want to forget anything that I was going to say, so that I intended to say to you guys. It's an honor to be here tonight with Chuck Fall, fellow board member and president of the Truth Action Project, also known as TAP, as Susan said. And I like to thank Susan and Alfred for hosting us. We're very honored to be here with all of you tonight. And thank you for keeping 9/11 Truth and Boston 9/11 Truth alive. Chuck and I are here to represent TAP, as Susan said, and our motto is against all deception, truth demands action. TAP is a grassroots networking community, and we invite you to join us. You can learn more about TAP by visiting our website, which I have up, what they call that, the homepage, at truthactionproject.org. Okay, so I have been involved with the 9/11 Truth movement since around 2014, starting with the banner campaign that some of you may know. I am the face of truth. Shortly after, I joined the 9/11 Truth Action Project as a board member. And as I said before the recording started, I attended my first board meeting from a hotel room in New York City in September of 2016. I was in New York for 9/11 Truth activism specifically, and to attend the Justice in Focus Symposium, where the 9/11 Truth Action Project and the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry were launched. People had approached me about 9/11 long before this, but I couldn't allow myself to believe our government could do something so evil and horrendous. However, as time passed, after that seed was planted, my eyes and mind opened, and I began to realize that what I had been told was true. Several political events in 2008 further opened my eyes. The first one was when I heard Barack Hussein Obama say, "We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America." I remember chills running down my spine. I just got them again. As I wondered what he meant by that, what he meant by transforming the USA. And the audience loudly cheered, but I felt physically ill. The second moment was discovering the Ron Paul revolution and realizing how the media was complicit in hiding him and his popularity from the public. The third time was when I started following and supporting Ron Paul as a presidential candidate. During the Republican National Convention, I saw a teleprompter showing a scripted message that contradicted what the audience was chanting. I knew then, pretty much without a doubt, that the election process was rigged. So these political events, even 16 years later, make me realize what Chuck will be speaking about tonight and advocating for building a political truth movement to elect truth-friendly candidates is essential. Early on, the 9/11 Truth Action Project aimed to achieve a truth-friendly Congress and a truth-friendly media, but as we all know, that's no easy feat. It's been a challenging journey discovering these truths, but what has helped me most is finding friends like some of you here in this meeting and like-minded people to stand with. It's comforting to know there are others who genuinely want to make a difference in how things are being done to us here in America and across all of humanity. TAP invites others who have also uncovered these harsh truths and seek a like-minded community to join. The organization started with a focus on 9/11 truth. However, after 2020 and the heavy censorship of 9/11 truth and the deep state's far-reaching influence, we decided to expand the organization to include other issues relevant to most Americans and focus on developing partnerships. We turned our attention to amplifying the messages of other truth-seeking groups by featuring them on the partner page of our website excuse me, I lost my place. By featuring them on the partner page of our website, visitors interested in one or more of our topics may discover these local, national, or global groups through our site. There are 9 categories now that TAP decided to focus on, and you can find them under what in the world is going on, and I'll just pull up that page. I hope it works. Oh, come on. I have to have a chat with the webmaster. There we go. Okay, there are 9 categories now that we have decided to focus on, and those are the 9/11 and the global war on terror, assassinations and the birth of the deep state, regulatory capture, reengineering the environment, power structure theories, propaganda and mind control, education, constitution under siege, and election integrity. And just real quick, I'll stop and add that under the education tab, there's an article about the Tunnels to Towers organization and how they are running a curriculum in all of our schools, kindergarten, I think, up through 12th grade. And one day I happened to pull up the financials of that nonprofit organization, and they are staggering, mind-blowing, in the billions of dollars that organization brings in. And it just really irks me that they're teaching our kids falsehoods about what really happened on 9/11. And I've always felt that if we can't get into the schools and where how they're teaching our children, I mean, we are fighting an uphill battle. So the Truth Action Project's expanded focus on other pressing topics beyond 9/11 speaks to the interconnected nature of the issues we face. Bringing attention to subjects like regulatory capture, election integrity, and propaganda is critical in challenging the narratives that shape public perception. By fostering collaboration and amplifying different truth-seeking initiatives, the organization TAP hopes to create a valuable network for those seeking to make a difference. If you look at our website, we have built an extensive website and established a lofty mission. Now we need committed, dedicated individuals to help spearhead these efforts that we have undertaken. Your involvement will empower our organization and the broader movements we support, allowing us to grow and create a lasting impact on society. Once again, Chuck and I invite you to join TAP in these quests for truth, justice, and accountability. Most importantly, I urge everyone to keep pushing forward. And now I'll turn it over to Chuck.
Before you do, can you provide a link to that specific volunteer tab?
Yes, and I get spammed there all the time. You were talking about like trolls and stuff. I think our volunteer page is under attack. But if you go to Get Active, the tab at the top, Get Active, and click on Volunteer, that takes you to our volunteer page where you can let us know how you'd like to help and reach out to us. You can also contact us at one of our email accounts, which isn't as heavily spammed, which would be info@Truth Action Project.
Okay. Is that an ampersand or AT? Oh, you're frozen.
And go and talk about kind of how I've come, my evolution as a political truther. And in high school, my smart friend who went to Harvard and became a professor and is now deceased, Stephen, gave me an article from the Rolling Stones, Hughes-Nixon Lansky connection. And it was a conspiracy theory. Now, subsequent to that, I've learned that the Rolling Stone has been implicated as a front for CIA propaganda. But it was about the Kennedy assassination. And as we know now with the Kennedy assassination, we'll never know the truth. The waters are muddied, there's doubt, and consequently, what I consider a state crime has been not accounted for and effectively covered up and dismissed into the dustbin of history. Now, I was, but I've always suspicious. I'm one of those classic skeptics and always been contrarian to official narratives, always, took Howard Zinn's People's History to heart. And come 9/11, my wife, ex-wife, called me and said, take a look at the TV. It was 8:05 and the tower had collapsed. We're on West Coast, so we're 2 hours, 3, whatever it was. The event had all happened, and we're getting it now West Coast time. And I'm looking at buildings imploding. And we all know the narrative. Well, they pancaked. This is what Dick Cheney, they pancaked. People else, well, they pancaked. Yeah, airplanes flew in and then they pancaked. And then we got that conditioned shock and awe, and we lived through a propaganda campaign. But of course, I didn't. I mean, what I saw was buildings imploding. I didn't see an airplane hit it and then the buildings collapse. I know that's what happened, but so I was very receptive and open to conspiracy theories that explain how those buildings collapsed. And of course, building 7, smoking gun, and that only came to my attention probably that was hidden pretty well. Unless you were dialed in on CNN News, boom, that day, you missed it and it caught up to you. And some people in Truth Movement didn't get caught up to till 4 years later. It's just, a lot of people are just oblivious to this. I wasn't. I tracked and I got into debate in my, Green Party discuss list. I'm in the Green Party in Oregon, and this is 2001, and everything's flying. And so for me, it was what was I left with? I was left with a preposterous claim that Osama bin Laden did it, and then we went into Afghanistan. Well, okay, that's what this is about. Oh, the Patriot Act. Oh yeah, that's what this was about. Oh, the anthrax attack. I was like, oh my God, another. I mean, it was like bewildering, right? I mean, we're overwhelmed with this stuff. This was classic, psyop operations. I'm living it, I'm thinking it, and I never accepted the official narrative. So I'm basically in my DNA a truther, and I get indignant at lies. It really bugs me when the authorities flat out in your face say, well, it collapsed, it just pancaked. Accept that. And then of course, I won't go into you all know the history. I'm not even going to talk about Pentagon or anything else. The whole friggin' thing was covered up, over orchestrated by Bob Mueller as the FBI guy and the CIA, all this, just, blah, blah, blah. So then come the COVID, I'm sorry, everything is connected. 9/11 is not a standalone event. It's It grew out of the unaccountability of the JFK assassination, and pieces put into place for that, enabled and sustained, and so on. My lament, in 1989, we were promised a peace dividend when the Soviet Union collapsed and the Berlin Wall came down. All right, well, 93, the first Twin Tower bomb happened in the basement. Uh-oh, terrorism. And then 2001 hits, and then, well, Patriot Act, you got to get the terrorists. There is no, the Soviet boogeyman's gone. Now we got a new one, terrorism. Boom. Okay, this is classic deep state operations committing state crimes against our democracy. I accept I was inspired by Cynthia McKinney's 20th anniversary presentation to the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Truth. And she represented 4 intellectuals, Mearsheimer, DeHaven Smith, a couple others. And she did this fantastic, now just kind of a synthesis of geopolitical thinkers, and explained what was happening to us in a geopolitical power play, deep state secret operation. DeHaven Smith introduces the idea of state crime against democracy. So JFK, 9/11, the COVID event, and many things in between rise to the level of a state crime. I am post-conspiracy theory. I don't wonder anymore about things. And things that are highly debatable, like, what really happened. Well, I just go agnostic if it's not important. I'm not gonna let that divide wreck my relationship with other people, or let that break down the capacity to build movement. The Pentagon is not it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. What's important is that we recognize that a crime occurred, that we're being lied to, and effectively we're in crises. We are in political state of crises right now as we speak. People in the political truth movement know this, especially if you've gone through the COVID thing. I'm sorry, I know people are on the fence around what really happened around COVID, and TAP we're not. There's this high level of consensus about what I'm sharing with you, and this is me not making anything up original. So I got introduced to TAP because in the Green Party, I wanted to bring truth politics to bear. In fact, in the Green Party, on the platform plank, we have a call for investigations into 9/11, because the implicit in that is the Green Party doesn't accept that the official narrative is true. Okay, or if it's not true, then what happened? We should know this. We're entitled to know this, as we're entitled to know around what happened to JFK. And notice that all the law that said everything should be disclosed is not being disclosed. And Trump didn't want to do it. Obama didn't want to do it. All these guys have had opportunity. Biden doesn't want to do it. None of these guys want to reveal all that's left of the JFK, because of course they're hiding something. And it would, and I'll tell you why they're not doing it, because it would go against the national security of our nation. If the American people knew that we're being lied to, and that people have effectively committed a kind of treason against our country, they would be going bonkers. But or not necessarily, they'd be rational. They talk together with the true people, and we go, yeah, we need a revolution. We need to throw the scoundrels out. We need blah, blah, blah. So I meet up with TAP, and I go, wow, that makes sense. You guys are ecumenical. You're not just single issue, you're multi-issue. Well, of course, that makes sense, because there's so many fronts upon which we, the people, are being confronted with big lies. So I got on board with Trina, and I have to commend Trina for producing that website. And she and Claudio did it, and it's encyclopedic. It's almost too big, and you have to wonder about a group that's willing to take on so much theoretically, but it's not that much. It's all reduced to the single crisis. And I just wrote an essay for our newsletter. The modern crisis is that we're being lied to. And the part of that crisis is that there really is a super rich plutocratic oligarchic cabal The word plutocracy is used by 19th century, the populists who struggled against the banking cartels in the late 1800s. They used the word plutocracy. It's a great word. It describes this super rich class, the 0.001%. And they are a very real problem. So so TAP has signed on to a solidarity statement with an idea that's coming out of my Green Party work. And I'll just tell you that I'm basically not listened to, not accepted, strongly called conspiracy theorist, Trumpista, fascist. I've been called the most venal, horrible things. I never experienced hate until I came out as a Green Libertarian to the Green Party. I've never, ever experienced the vitriol that these good progressive socialists can heap on you. And I'm basically an egalitarian. And as an egalitarian, I accept, that we need a fair society. And that's something I think we need to be doing in our truth movement. So I've represented to TAP and TAP's just solidarity. They say, okay, great idea. So Green Liberty, even though I'm kicked out of the Green Party, I'm not kicked out, I'm there. You can't kick someone out of a party registration, but you can make them shun them. You can make them feel stupid, and you can call them really bad names, and you can not listen to them. Even though we have a platform plank that says we should be talking about 9/11. We should be demanding investigations. That's in the Green Party. But Jill Stein doesn't want to talk about it. She's afraid of embarrassment or being called a conspiracy theorist. So I'm rambling here, but what we do in our movement is normalize talking about this stuff of state crimes and big lies. We need to, not let the cognitive dissonance stop us, even though I don't bring this up at the dinner table when I visit family. We have to choose our place, time and place, and keep our relationships. So the idea is that what our movement needs and what Green Liberty as a block is, Green Liberty works inside the party, outside the party, and it's this idea. It's a brand for political truth, and it says that the fundamental demands are accountability for malfeasance and crimes, transparency in all our affairs, so that because sunlight is the best antiseptic to rot, gangrene, corruption. Third is protection for whistleblowers, because we need people to come forth and share when they bear witness and see malfeasance. Fourth, we need independent media. So we need, and this is coming out of Cynthia McKinney's appeal to the lawyers, and she says, you lawyers are the natural leaders in politics because you have bared witness to this unspeakable. And that's James Douglas's title from his book, JFK and the Unspeakable. And the unspeakable is that horrible abyss of human depravity. It's evil. But those who go, as we do as truthers, to the edge of the unspeakable and look in, that is a measure of your own humanity. And this is the work we do. So we need, yeah. Go ahead.
Susan has her hand up, and I wanted to make a real brief comment
Yeah.
about an attorney I've met and what he says about the frontline defense of attorneys.
Okay, let's go for it. Let's go for it. Let's break my
Yeah, I wanted
Susan
to grab Susan's hand first.
And I am coming to a close. I was going to wrap it up. Okay, go ahead. I'm listening.
You said that Jill Stein won't touch 9/11, but 7 years ago, she did come out and say, we need a new investigation of 9/11. I'm wondering if your contact with her had something to do with that.
No, that's old, before my time. And bless her heart, she acknowledges that even the COVID mandate is not appropriate, for example. And she takes steps. She goes so far. But what she doesn't have is a big constituency of cover, of people clamoring for more and giving her the cover to say, okay, well, the people want it, so I guess I got to kind of lead on it. And that's not okay, I hear you. That's a good point. But there's not an encouragement for her to keep no one's leading on this stuff. This is part of, and so let me just close and just part of my theory here of this block of a truth block is no one should do this work by themselves. No candidate should go alone and just say, I'm going to lead on this. It just is, it's suicide. I mean, it's just too lonely, and there needs to be a group throughout the country. So my vision is if we could get 4, 5, or 6 from 4, 5, 6 different states, U.S. Senate, federal U.S. Senate people, 25, 30 across state and U.S. House. Then you have a block. Then you have this group that's speaking from the same hymnal. And what do they speak to? They speak to the demand for accountability, transparency, to fight the corruption that's rotting our republic. Because this is a language that bridges the left-right. People all recognize the problem of corruption. I go a step further and have now advanced that we need to be for an egalitarian society as the antidote to the toxic domination of the super rich plutocracy, which effectively through 1947 National Security Act took over the deep state, created deep state, took it over, ran CIA, has killed multiple democratically elected developing nation. Patrice Lumumba is the most kind of grotesque in your face to Kennedy. I think it was just 2 weeks before Kennedy took office, they killed Patrice Lumumba. There's, of course, the Shah. Then there's Allende. These are state crimes outside of the United States. There's state crimes within. I think all the 60s bloodbath was all to stomp down the youthful, the natural inspiration to revolt. What if Martin Luther, Malcolm, Robert, Fred Hampton were not killed, if JFK were not killed? What if they all got to live full lives? What possibilities were effectively stolen from us, we the people, our nation, by that bloodbath? I think there needs to be atonement. The plutocracy, and these are known people, owe us. Their descendants owe us. I mean, I think there's a group that does a war crimes tribunal, and they make these beautiful skits and they act out kind of and they really do deliver subpoenas, and they prosecute corporations that feed the war machine. Well, what about Henry Kissinger or Alan Dulles? They both deserve posthumous trials. Even if we just went with civil court measures of 51% civil crimes against humanity, I'd be happy with that. But I think there's preponderance of evidence that they actually committed murder. And so this is the idea, an electoral bloc, building partnerships. That's what we hope that TAP can become. TAP can redeem the 9/11 truth movement. And I think one question I'm interested in hearing from people is what is the status of what's the condition of the truth movement? How do we, reach people who live in cognitive dissonance? How do we make it kind of okay to talk frankly about the fact that our society is stolen by this class that is running a deep state to carry out empire building? I mean, it's as evident to me as the King Louis XVI was to the French in 1789, if that's the one. So, Trina, is there anything I'm missing and leaving out that I should have been highlighted in my remarks relative
I
to
don't think so, but I did want to add something though about
Yeah.
the line you mentioned when you said that attorneys should be our, first line of defense. I came up on a video on YouTube of my great friend Phil Rustino here in Florida, who is has done a lot of great work down here in this state, and I stumbled upon. I think it was the 10th I think it was a 10th anniversary video. And this was around 2016 is when I found it, whenever I joined TAP. and the 9/11 Truth Action Project back then. And there was a comment by an attorney named David Petrano, and I've spoken to him on the phone several times. He's just a delightful, wonderful, sincere man. And his comment on that video was that he was an attorney in Central Florida, West Central Florida, and that he was willing to do any work with any other attorneys or judges in the area, that attorneys and judges should be the first line of defense to what happened on 9/11, what is happening in our country since post 9/11, and that he would work with anybody. So I was like, oh, yeah. So I contacted him. He left his phone number, he left his email. I contacted him, and he explained to me that he had actually been ordered to attend a psych evaluation because of his comments about 9/11 on that video. And he was actually disbarred as a result of that investigation. And he warned me that the truth movement would not be able to make any progress at all, told me I was wasting my time until we did something about another thing Chuck mentioned, the National Security Act of 1947. So all under Truman, President Truman. So that's all I had to add on that piece about attorneys, judges, and the National Security Act of 1947. That's all I have.
What can be done about that?
I don't know, honestly. And that's what, we're grappling with. I think, I don't know. One of the things that TAP is taking on is trying to build partnerships. And hopefully if we, Chuck wanted to talk about where the movement is headed and what can we do. I think the stronger our unity, the stronger our connections, maybe networking with groups outside of our own. That's where TAP got the idea of forming partnerships. We don't want to go out and just start another group that's doing something someone's already doing, probably even better. So to us, it's more about joining forces. And one of our partners is actually called, coincidentally, joiningforces.world. And Defending Humanity is another, they're founded by the same man, Stephen Ferry. And I just think it's going to be a matter of putting aside our own little side projects, if you will, and truly pulling together. I don't know how we're going to make an impact big enough to truly get around that act of 1947.
What's the name of the act again?
The National Security Act of 1947. I made a Facebook post about it back when this all transpired, and it's been shared hundreds and hundreds of times, my post, and hundreds of comments. And I've copied and pasted direct language from my emails with David Petrano at his, I asked him for permission to do so. And
Can I share a story, Trina?
yeah, I'll try to dig up that post and send it to you in an email, Susan. It's quite an interesting read. Go ahead, Chuck.
Just to the 1947 National Security Act.
I'll see if I can find it now.
A great book is David Talbot's The Devil's Chessboard. And it tells the story of Alan Dulles and his brother, and there's so the 1947 National Security Act enshrined the lessons developed in World War II under the operations for Secret Service or whatever it was, OSS. And Truman wrote an essay that precisely 1 month, or posted an essay in the Washington Post precisely 1 month after JFK's assassination. And he spoke kind of, I guess the word is obliquely, kind of roundabout, about the CIA, that he regretted signing the 1947 National Security Act and the way it was formed, because it gave license to this thing called the CIA. And he he started writing his essay within a week after JFK's assassination. I mean, he would had to have logically, and then to be published a month later. He didn't discuss, I don't believe, the assassination. He spoke sideways. He didn't touch that, but he then said the CIA is a problem, is what Truman communicated. But if the authority to deal with that is Congress, Eisenhower warned the nation of the military-industrial complex. He wanted to put a military-industrial congressional complex, but his advisor said, no, drop Congress. Don't put that in there. It'll muddle what you're trying to say. But also, if you read the text, he talks about the biopharmacological biowarfare division in the military. He actually speaks to that precisely. So Eisenhower issues this warning. Truman makes a laments that this CIA got too much power. Congress is the authority, but everyone's afraid. This is what the JFK, this is what you learn. You get afraid. And rightfully people are afraid because stuff happens to people that talk about things in the way in the truth movement you talk about what happened at 9/11, to the towers, to the Pentagon, to the inside job, the people behind it, and so on. So that's what we're up against, and that's what a truth movement speaks frankly and forthrightly about this crisis. This is a crisis for our country, and I think, to me, this is what TAP is doing, is speaking frankly and calling out. And now we're left with, what do we do? And my thought is, and it might not, it's going to be, if there's brave, I may be that lawyers and professionals can't step out on this because they're going to be attacked in the way that Trina just described for the lawyer. Doctors who are refugees from the COVID program are also candidates for leadership because they bared witness to another. I know that people don't agree with this. There's not a consensus, but for me, the COVID event was a big lie, on par with the 9/11 event, and even more sophisticated, more complicated, more impactful, and ways beyond what we all comprehend, because it's all in secret, and what we know is from stuff that leaks out, and so on. So Nissan has his hand up. We should definitely hear from Nissan.
Before we do, I just wanted to quickly wrap up what you said, that the 1947 National Securities Act, to be overturned, would take an act of Congress. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, well, I'll bring that up later. Thank you. Go ahead, Nissan.
Yes. So I want to thank Trina and Chuck for coming on and continuing the fight for truth. And I think Chuck nails it on the head about, what we're fighting is cognitive dissonance. And it's basically an effect and at the aftermath of all the shock and awe and psychological warfare that we've been going through. Population is pretty much traumatized. And traumatized to such a hard degree, facing with multiple different psychological issues, from PTSD to anxiety to depression to, that leads these new realms of, disconnectedness to reality, like prompt enragement syndrome, or, Alan Lewis sites, all these different things that is devoiding people from wanting to engage in these conversations and practically be, ostracizing themselves. And this is going deep-seated which I find even rough, because at first you just think these negative actors are, doing this because they're getting paid, or these negative actors are doing this because they're morally corrupted and, want to sow chaos. But no, it's gotten so deep that normal people have been tricked into fighting against their own good causes and their own morals. And it's the moral degradation that comes from that, from the sick society that we're in. So, I mean, one, yes, we need people to bear the high level of being that standard and fighting for the truth and fighting, and being that ideal. But we also, and yes, in some way we have to take on a legal battle. But underlying that, I think we have to come together and talk about, how to heal the psychological stress that we're under. How do we make people whole? How do we heal that scar, that deep scar that we have, that's a gaping wound? That's probably not an easy question. I mean, that would probably take conferences with psychologists and philosophers for a while. This is something that we've never seen in the history of mankind. I mean, it wasn't just 40, 50 years ago that they were dealing with when the government actually took an interest in actually creating these programs like mind control and psychological warfare. So this is a brand new thing where we're living in, and we don't know the full extending effects that would be throughout the future on our generations. We're just seeing it now. And I mean, it is up to us to start and tread that line and figure out where to go from here. And so, we're the pioneers in this, and it's scary, but I think this having the open discussion and trying different things is just the way we're gonna have to go through this, because there is no playbook. There is nothing we can go back to reference for a solution. This is unprecedented. Thank you.
Both Alfred and Trina have their hands raised, but since Trina is our guest speaker, do you mind, Alfred, if she goes first? Okay.
I'll only take a second.
No
Thank you,
worries,
Susan.
go ahead.
Thank you, Alfred. Thank you for the grace. I was just going to add to what Nissan just said as far as the psychological warfare and it being to the degrees that we haven't seen before, the likes of before. And I wanted to add to that during the COVID event that Chuck spoke of, the amount of people that were denied access to their loved ones in hospitals, nursing homes, dying alone, the people that have, lost loved ones, and the psychological warfare that all of that brought on, that what the children were subjected to in schools, the 6-foot rule, the masking, etc. And so the psychological warfare that we saw with 9/11 and the other state crimes that Chuck alluded to, the psychological warfare is just being heaped up on people. And I wanted to add to that, to the likes we've never seen. You're correct, Nissan. And one of the things that the 9/11 Truth Action Project had was Dr. T. Ruth, which are one of our members here on the call tonight was a part of, with actually trying to help write articles and talk to people about what they were feeling and thinking about that event. Dr. T. Ruth, it was Dr. Truth, like Dr. Ruth, I don't know if you all know of who Dr. Ruth was or is, but I always got a kick out of listening to her. But also the systems, the wallet, I think keeps people's financial means has been affected by the quote unquote system that we're living under, the tyranny that we're living under, the corruption that we're living under. The homelessness is just, oh my gosh, I don't even want to think about it. But just, I think people's ability to fight back is being hindered because they're on this rat race, on this hamster wheel, trying to make a living and trying to put food on their table, trying to keep a roof over their head. A lot of people living in their cars right now, not by choice, not by choice. So I think a lot of people's hands have been tied as far as their ability to fight back against what we're going under. So all of this is having a major impact. That's what I had to add. Alfred, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I had a bunch of comments, so I don't want to take up too much time, but first of all, Chuck, are you an attorney at all, or And
No,
have you ever thought of running for a political office? In other words, there was a guy out in Oregon, I forgot his name, but
it's, no, okay, let me just say that. I mean, here saying, I'm saying political truthers need to run for office. It's conceivable that I would put my hat in the ring as part of a block, but I'm not going to do anything by myself. I want to create block, political truth block, and social justice block. I mean, we can talk about the justice piece of all of this, but and we can even talk about is this the best political strategy? I mean, maybe I'm wrong that we could make any political progress trying to galvanize the masses to feel indignant about the big lies and the state crimes. I mean, that's my theory, that that they could get angry and see that they've been ripped off and we need a real change. So keep going. I interrupted you, Alfred.
that's okay, that's great. No, my thought was, has anybody tried to establish like a 9/11 truth party?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and is there any interest in doing that, I guess, within the TAP movement? Which I'm sure I know the answer to, but
Let me just quickly answer you just right off the cuff. It can't be single truth issue. It needs to be the gestalt. It needs to be the big picture. It needs to be the warning from Eisenhower to the debacle and catastrophe of the COVID public health event, if we can dignify it with those terms. Some people call it, I'm not
The
even going to.
military industrial complex.
Yeah, as part of that. So, but I would allow that individuals who run in this block would feel more confident speaking about the crime of 9/11. And they would build their campaign to strongly condemn the covering up, the telling of lies, the denying of justice, the misleading of the public, the corrupting of our legal system and our military industrial complex by subjecting us to another generation of forever wars. And Ukraine is part of that program. We have been okay, Alfred, you still had another question. You see what happens.
I'll keep going until they tell me to
trigger
stop.
me, man.
At Boston 9/11 Truth, we've tried to restrict our conversations to 9/11 for the reasons that we didn't want to dilute our message, and we felt that we had all the evidence we need to bring forth legislation or continue on with the 9/11 story. And having said that, there are a couple of things like A&E is doing, and the American Scientific Integrity Act, which they are trying to get passed. It's a new piece of legislation. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's on their website. The other thing I always go to personally, I think it sort of sums up everything I feel about 9/11. This is Albert Lucente. We, in our agenda items tonight, there's a link to a letter that he wrote about 9/11, and it really, I mean, it invigorates everything I feel about 9/11. And I, would love people to read it, particularly on this call. The last thing I'll talk about, well, there are a couple of things. Danny Sheehan, the lawyer who I think was affiliated with the Lawyers Committee, but he made the comment that in order to really prosecute 9/11, that the movement needed about $10 million to do that, and that's always been a goal. Trying to figure out how you could get money channeled into the Lawyers Committee on that level. Then the other thing I think Barbara Honegger always talks about is being having the case presented from outside the United States. In other words, well, something like the truth in what was the in South Africa, the war crimes tribunal, and something of that nature. Yeah, these are all projects related to 9/11 that are calling for attention, calling for money. And as far as, Boston 9/11, correct me if I'm wrong, the people on the call, but we have always said, we leave our politics at the door and we pursue the issue of 9/11. And we're not here to, I mean, it's fine, other people have other interests, and we've lost a number of people to the COVID story, and but we want to continue on with 9/11 and keep that focus. So these are all things, but I love what you say. I agree with almost everything you've said tonight. And I'd love to have you run for an office. If I would be the first supporter, you could go.
You'd be a great speaker.
It really is, and you're very articulate, I will add. So anyway, I said what I had to say.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Alfred.
Thank you.
I hear you.
Susan, you're muted. I see you talking.
Oh,
And
that-
Chris Gruner has his hand up too. He did that a few minutes back.
Okay, yeah, he texted me, so I said after Miles,
Yeah,
because I didn't see that his hand was up, sorry.
no rush, no rush.
Okay, go ahead, Miles.
Oh, hello. Oki, Danatata, Tansi, hello and greetings. My name's Miles Flegg. I'm on Treaty 7 territory, Alberta, Canada, traditional lands of the Niitsitapi, and also known as the North Blackfoot Confederacy. The reason I use those Indigenous languages is because we are in Canada moving at a snail's pace towards hopefully one day truth and reconciliation with First Nations. And so to me, everything is connected, and it all does come down to truth and reconciliation. And and I'll now move into specific 9/11. I've been absorbing a lot of information, and I look forward to getting more in contact with your group and participating and finding out what events you have, because I am interested in the bigger picture and the psychological issues. And I just want to share a quote. I like to appreciate what you're doing. One of the things I found disappointing was, as part of a depth psychology group, which is based on the work of pioneering psychologist Carl Jung, and you are all examples of what Carl Jung, some of the things that he shared in his life and his research. And for example, this quote: "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate."
Yeah.
So in other words, oh gosh, we're gonna end up with nuclear wars on 3 fronts, apparently, according to a recently leaked memo Biden has written. Get prepared for that. So, oh gosh, bombs are dropping all over us, blowing the place up. Well, we'll just call that fate. Yeah, because we weren't people like you trying to dig into the truth and as was mentioned, the unspeakable. That's what Carl Jung was delving into, this unconscious. Sadly, though, as I was going to say, that I was part of a group, a fellow who was a U.S. Marine himself, retired. And strangely, when I raised, gosh, we really provoked Russia. It was like, what are you talking about? Like, well, yeah, there's a lot of projection. And that's this group themselves are talking about projection, don't seem to get it for their own projections. But with respect to now, just that was a compliment to what you guys are doing. And now activism, it's been limited for me. One piece of activism was I got, for some reason, I won't go into the connections, but I was on a list of events, invitations to events at a local mosque. And it turned out, oh gosh, there's a gentleman who is a former editor, Muslim person, former editor of the Toronto Star, a large newspaper here. And he's got a book and he's going to be talking to this group about being Muslim in Canada. And I thought, okay, I want to go there and ask a question if I get an opportunity. And sure enough, his first time being in a mosque, it was quite an experience. And there was prayer service before. And anyway, then finally the speaker came on and he gave his spiel. And I said, well, who I am. And I said, how about, are you aware of Tower 7 falling? And that Professor Halsey's written an analysis about the collapse not being due to office fires alone. It had to be, it was a global collapse taking out 80 columns and 8 floors simultaneously. And he cut me off. He said, oh, I've heard about all these conspiracy theories. And I said, well, what about the work by Professor McQueen of Queen's University? Oh, I said, would you look at the video 7, the documentary? Would you consider the work by Professor McQueen? And he just no, I've heard it all. And I was like, wow, I couldn't believe it. And afterwards, 3 Muslim fellows came up to me and said, oh, I appreciated what you said. But anyway, the media is captured and they're part of this psychological operation. And even this group of Muslim people and this former editor, he's a propagandist for this line. And finally, with respect to what our speaker said with respect to Truman's editorial opinion piece about JFK's assassination just after it happened, that apparently made it into the morning edition of the Washington Post, but it was canned for the afternoon edition because back then they had 2 editions. So anyway, do you want to talk about media? And how anything have you
Well,
made any
let me
inroads?
just say that the media is absolutely captured, and we see this in the whole on so many levels. The media was captured in 24 within 12 hours. You guys in 9/11 know the famous the morning of. The deep state has people positioned to be interviewed and set the narrative. And the 2 narratives I got. So the point is, yes, we absolutely need independent media. And TAP is trying to be, independent media with our forums that we do, and we cover a range of topics. But the point is, the chief freedom we have is the 5, there's 5 freedoms in the First Amendment, speech, press, assembly, religion, and the petition to complain. These precious 5 freedoms embedded in the First Amendment is what we have and what we stand on and what we have to advance. And some of us in the TAP program are really strong on, finding county district attorneys that would convene a grand jury to accept, data. I mean, it's conceivable that the Boston Truth Group, I think we all in every city has to have a perennial program where we go and say, here are the facts. prosecute these people because, again, we're post conspiracy theory. The evidence is so clear and it's tilting the scales. I don't need to. I mean, there's and I think so. What I'm doing in my work as a truth activist is speaking in an assumptive voice. I'm not wondering anymore, and I'm not even debating anymore. I'm full on indicted. I've indicted them. They you know, there's a trial ready for you because you've really led the American people down a rotten path. So and there's a lot of people that have this state of mind, and I think so. I guess the question here is, yeah, to the media. Let's go back to some other questions. I mean, you guys could get me going, but Miles, welcome. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet a Canadian, and nice. And let me just close with this. Part of my idea of this Green Liberty block, I call it. I've taken the word green and I've joined it to the word liberty. And I did that to stick it to some of the lefties that are only concerned about justice, but won't talk about freedom and liberty. And I'm basically a green libertarian is what I am, but I'm also believe in an egalitarian society. So I believe in collective freedom. I'm not just a Ayn Randian, Superman hero, whatever, do your best. I mean, we need the group, and the group needs to be rational and sane and not fall into bickering and digression and diversion and divisiveness and all that rubbish. This is where I get short and impatient with infiltrators like you had last week. You described in your meeting people that tried to push you off the mark, push you off your focus. And we've gone through it in TAP, and we struggle in the Green Party. The Green Party is not a free organization. They don't foster authentic dialogue and discourse. TAP is totally predicated on building respectful dialogue. This is our hope. This is our salvation, is creating media clearings. And the mainstream legacy media is not doing it for us. Our job is to deconstruct what they say. And I'll make two observations. New York Times ran two columnists composed an essay together on egalitarianism. In the New York Times, they full on said, America needs more egalitarianism. Then it would be a better society, and the tensions and the divisiveness that we are experiencing would be lessened. Well, that's what good old progressivism is about. The state ameliorates the social conditions that are nasty so people don't have revolution. But egalitarianism is beyond that. It's actually a society that is fair, and in the pure sense of it, it's where there is no rich and no poor, and everyone works and everybody gets taken care of, and it's mutual aid and solidarity. John Spritzler, you guys in Boston have John Spritzler in your neighborhood. You should reach out to him and ask him to connect the truth movement with advancing egalitarianism. I think that's how we answer the problem of plutocracy. Is they're done, just like the colonialists were done with the king, and other nations have turned republic and gotten rid of their monarchs, as in France. This is the stage we're in. We are in an epoch, a time of history where this plutocracy is even much more complicated than the simple monarch ever was. But we are in a predicament and a true existential kind of existence struggle. And they played their hand with the COVID. They mandated vaccine. The president said, you shall get vaccines. All the servicemen, women had to take the vaccine. It's not a safe and effective product. And people have been hurt by this. And this is profoundly wrong. And it was advanced under fraudulent conditions and circumstances. And if you guys in your group have lost some people because they couldn't tolerate a conversation about the COVID, then tough for them. And be strong, and don't let stupid things like that, and if they're gone, I think you should my attitude is they're not going to help grow the organization. They're not going to grow the movement.
I wanted to clarify, Chuck. They left not because they were against, not because they were for the COVID mandates, but because they were against the COVID mandates and they wanted to throw all their energies into that instead of 9/11.
Okay, so they broke, they left you guys because you guys weren't giving them the clearing. They wanted to do the activism they thought was important. Okay, well then, that's kind of cheap too, we got to grow the movement, and the movement, JFK is connected to the Eisenhower warning, is connected to the 9/11, is connected to the COVID. We need to get Gestalt, big picture. We're lied to on multiple fronts, and there is a wicked plutocratic cabal that commands military industrial complex, operates deep state. It's clinically evident, and it's factually detailed out. And there's no conspiracy theory here. There's simply a clinical, you could do a genealogical chart. People have done this. Kevin did a great, who's the one who's unpacked the key players in the 9/11 event?
Kevin Ryan.
Barrett,
Kevin Ryan.
Kevin Ryan. Okay.
He's top notch, right? I mean, I don't know if I'm very forgiving people. I know there's a lot of, oh, he's good, he's bad, or she's in, she's out, this kind of business in the truth movement. I liked his naming of names, and I think some people think that's a little harsh and kind of unbecoming and unseemly to name names, but if you did the crime, you got to do the time,
Can we go to Chris Gruner?
Um,
He was supposed to be after Miles.
Yeah, thanks. Trina and Chuck, thank you so much for investing time to be with us and sharing about your current work. I really appreciate it. I have a question for each of you. Chuck, I'm wondering if in your conversations with Jill and or any of the other leaders in the Green Party, anyone has shared with you in any detail their suspicions or concerns about the events of 9/11. And then Trina, I would like to know if you have in your thinking about the evolution of the movement, how it was you came to the conclusion that it would be better to be broad-based. In our organization, Boston 9/11 Truth, we had a great deal of debate about it and finally decided that our public-facing presentation would be exclusively on the events of 9/11. That's how we decided we could potentially be most effective. You obviously have come to a different conclusion. I'm wondering how you came to that conclusion and why you think it's more likely to lead to the results that we all seek. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think we came to that conclusion with the thought in mind that we would still be very 9/11 focused, but we did want to expand the canopy, if you will, for people that we could attract to help gain traction in growing a broader movement. And as Chuck said, I think most of us succumb to the idea that all of these events that we have been experiencing are interconnected and that they all play a part in the bigger picture. And we were hoping to gain more momentum and more traction, and quite frankly, be able to partner with more people. And that alone, coupled with the fact that anytime 9/11 Truth is mentioned in the algorithms or on Google or anything, you're stuck to the very bottom of the rung. So we were hoping to, not get caught up in all the algorithms, the censorship, and mainly growing our partners and helping grow a broader, bigger movement.
And are you finding a sense of satisfaction that yes, this feels right? And in what ways has that perspective feeling like it's paying off for you?
I feel like it's paying off for me and personally, because way before COVID came on, I'm just going to say it, I became anti-vax because I started hearing and seeing all the people in the medical freedom movement talking about vaccine injury, whether it be adult, whether it be child. And I feel myself have a quote unquote hidden suspected vaccine injury. So it's something that I was really taking on strongly and 9/11. And then I have been big, strong chemtrail advocate, the geoengineering for, just as long as 9/11. So all of those things resonate with me personally. And I mentioned the Tunnels to Towers article we have under education. I don't like where our education system's heading. And I'm not a Trumper, I'm not a Biden person, but election integrity is important to me because I feel like with the Diebold machines, the computers, the way our elections are run on both sides, Democratic and Republican, Democrat and Republican have both at some point in our history been tampered with. And all of those issues that we decided to take on, the regulatory capture, when you look into what, I mean, they're all important to me. So I guess it was an easy
Okay.
sell for
Mhm.
me to go ahead and go that route,
Thank
as
you.
well as 9/11.
Yeah, yeah.
9/11 will always be so near and dear to my heart. And all of you that are focusing on solely 9/11, you know, gratitude immense.
Mm.
And we'd love to partner with you guys.
Thank you.
Let me
And-
just answer briefly and to the question about Jill Stein. I haven't talked to her. I've, as an activist within the Green Party, tried to get a resolution passed that something, it was, to investigate 9/11. And my own party kind of resisted this and they didn't want to go there, even though we have a platform plank that says investigate it. So all I can say about Jill is she doesn't want to be tarred as a conspiracy theorist. And she's very establishmentarian, even though she's, pro-worker. She's the strongest anti-war candidate, and bless her heart for not pulling back. But nor does she go all the way and condemn plutocracy. There's a kind of a walk around, talk around that we do in our society. There really is this problem. And so that's all I would say about that. I close with this, that your group, Boston 9/11, could politically lobby the Green Party in Massachusetts and say, you could remind them that in the Green Party US, now their state party may not have anything on 9/11. The Green Party US is a confederation organization of the states. You could say you're affiliated with the Green Party US. You could even look into their platform planks. Maybe they have a position on 9/11. This is something we could do. TAP could take this. We could do a joint project between TAP and 9/11. But the point would be to call out the Green Party to honor their platform by voting to write letters to our senators to open investigations into 9/11 because the 9/11 Commission was fraudulent. These are all media plays, but it's all within our First Amendment. It's like, this is what we have. We have our voices, we have our writing, we have our stories that we tell, we have our demands that we make around these things. So that's a project that's out there. TAP would definitely join in on that. Okay, Chuck out.
Yeah. Thanks to you both.
You're welcome.
Neeson is next. He raised his hand again.
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to say, Chuck, I definitely agree with you. You should run for a political office of some kind. I would vote for you, but not just to try to win the seat, but I think it's very important like you said, with the First Amendment, it's all about capturing the narrative. And I think if you just stand in that and you stand as the opposing force and not just without hesitation, just upfront state, the position of like, this is what I believe in, then you could change the narrative and start breaking down the barriers of the stigma of these topics. Just like what happened with Bernie Sanders, he broke down the stigma of socialism. Just like what's happening now in Congress, breaking down the stigma of UAP. It's all about having that talk and being upfront and, excuse me, is about, and have not back down, and to stand in that, and that shows people that, hey, this is not something that should be stigmatized. This is not something that we should be scared to talk about. This is something, and it's scary to do that. But I know, Chuck, you would probably be the man to do that. And I don't. My question to you is, with this idea of building the block with the Liberty Black Caucus and TAPS, I want to know what would you like to see, on how would you like to build this out to get other candidates into this process of yours, and work in a coalition to try to make this kind of block of campaign happen. Thank you.
It's the same thing that it's building our partnerships. And, there is a Green Liberty Caucus.org website, and it's basically I post stuff there. And I'm the chief proponent for this Green Liberty thing and running political truthers. So I see people, I meet people, I go to Del Bigtree and a Highwire, I go to Children's Health Defense, I track stuff there. I go to A&E and listen about 9/11 stuff. And you meet these people that are all articulate and capable and truthers. And they're speaking.
Meryl Nass, you're a big fan of Meryl
Meryl,
Nass.
Meryl Nass is, well, I'm going to meet with her and I'm going to talk to her about this. So basically, there are so much talent out there and people that are naturally indignant at being lied to. And so the idea here is, I don't know. I mean, you're asking how do you organize? And I'm not an organizer.
That's what we're trying to figure out, actually. We need all your help to do it.
But I think what we do is, so let me just say this. Green Liberty Caucus has formed there's a PAC that we can collect donations, and the goal of the PAC is to do training on what is a Green Liberty bloc slated candidate speak to, and what are the basic ideas. Well, we're resisting this plutocracy that's lied to us on multiple fronts, committed state crimes, created a vast economic divide that is worst ever, and destroyed the ecology of the planet, because they all had warnings in the 60s about what would happen with some, keep burning fossil fuels and blah, 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 stuff's going to happen. They knew it. The science was there, but they ignored it. And so there's going to be a convention in early October, and every year there's going to be a convention at Green. I'm going to start running the Green Liberty Caucus. It's a caucus, a block, and it'll be independent people, because the Green Party won't tolerate this. But I'm not giving up my green value, which is, I really think we need to restore nature, and I think letting the ecology deteriorate in order to have industrial society was a big mistake, and our leadership failed us. And I think if Kennedy had not been killed, and I think if all those 60 leaders had not been killed and had been allowed to live full political lives, the whole tenor and conversation of our country would have been different. I think we would have, who knows what kind of interesting progressive programs could have been put into place to steer the economy in ways that are more rational, instead of, so, and so on. So to this on, yes, we need to organize. I mean, we need to have every state, there needs to be a truther group that's politically driven and building naturally organics from the leaders, the people that are standing up. And every candidate is going to have their pet peeve, and they're going to naturally lead on whatever that is. Could be fighting the false narrative around vaccines, the false narrative around those gloomy trails in the sky, false narrative around, JFK, COVID, 9/11, whatever. I think we're going to have a demand for accountability, transparency, protection for whistleblowers to reclaim our republic. And we need an egalitarian society of mass movement to basically expropriate wealth from the billionaire class and distribute it in order to have a just, equitable society. I mean, I don't know what that's going to look like in the nitty gritty, and I don't have to know, and we don't have to know. We just have to assert that we stand on that possibility. And Bill Gates does not need to own 10,000 odd acres so he can grow GMO crops and experiment on the population. No,
And
I'd happily seize all.
that was
Screw
another,
eminent
that's another one
domain. I
near
don't
and
know
dear
how
to
you
me
do it.
is our soil, the GMO crops, the
That's a whole
food
nother front.
supply, I
It's
mean,
about our food supply.
it's that. So Chris, I hope I answered your question appropriately, because there
Yeah.
are just, you know, like I said, 9/11 isn't going away in my heart at all, ever, but there are just so many issues we're all faced with. I mean, it was, like I said, it was easy for me to,
I certainly share your concerns. We have a different strategic approach, but I know right where you're coming from.
thank you. Thank you
I was
very much.
hoping to interject before Nissan left, but he had to go.
Oh, I still see him. He's not quite gone
Oh.
yet. He said in the chat, now he's gone.
Yeah, yeah.
There you see him, now you don't.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that I brought Nissan into the Boston 9/11 group when I met him at a Green Party candidates night here in Worcester, Massachusetts. So you know, just to give you a little encouragement, Chuck, there may be a lot more Green Party members who are on board with the you know, the falsehoods of 9/11 than you might know about. So yeah, and that's how I met Nissan, and he's joined us a few times, and you know, he's not even in Massachusetts. I believe he's in New York or New Jersey. I can't remember where. So
I think New York.
yeah.
No, I appreciate that. And Alfred and Ross have their hands up.
Go ahead, Alfred.
Okay. This is great. And I come from a background of sales, marketing, and I've always been a believer in branding. And the statement, it's called a KISS statement, keep it simple, stupid. And I always have looked at TAP, as much as I appreciate the subject matters, and I, you know, have my heart's in the same place. I just get overwhelmed by taking on that many issues. And it just seems to me that, you know, that's why I always wanted to stay focused on, in our group, on getting the message out and of 9/11. And we've always had this controversy, even with the message, that you know, if you go out on the street and start talking about Judy Woods, you might as well just throw in the towel. I mean, no one's going to listen to you. We've had a lot of success with younger people, and they're absolutely thirsty for all of our flyers and DVDs. And I've found the 9/11 has almost become mainstream among certain groups. And I, you know, I'm at an age where I can only deal with one thing at a time. And I feel like I look at TAP, God love you. I just couldn't take on all those subjects. And so that's kind of what I just wanted to get across. But, you know, keep doing what you're doing. But just keep in mind that this is a marketing campaign, and this is what keep repeating. That's what they do. You know, the old Geico ads that drove everybody nuts. And but boy, did it stick in your head. That's kind of where I think we need to do a lot of our focus on. So anyway, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alfred.
Thank you. Ross, or I don't know where Susan went, but hi. Hi there.
Yeah, am I being heard well? I'm on a different computer than normal.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and first of all, to Gene and Sandra, I apologize for not signing off officially with you guys last week. I was, we had a big storm
Oh, now your
in
audio
New
went out.
York City for about, uh-oh. Yeah, New York City, we had 12 inch, a lot of rain and 12 hours without power, so without internet at least.
Okay.
So I got cut out of the conversation there, but didn't mean to drop off on you guys. But what I'd say is, I saw an article today about Stockholm syndrome, and I know we're all familiar with the Stockholm syndrome. Just basically a review of what that was all about, and of course that is, of course, I think what we are going through as a society. We're hostage, and we and most people are going to protect their hostage keeper, their oppressor. And it's a psychological effect of wanting to be part of the superorganismal group. It's part of wanting to be comfortable with the yin and yang of comfort and fear. That you want to be in the comfort zone as much as possible. And therefore, 9/11 truth is far too inconvenient. Even though I think most people, I'm sure that in New York City, everybody knows that there's a problem with the 9/11 story. And I think, unfortunately, though, we have had a lot of good progress with a lot of these big organizations. Our architects and engineers got created, lawyers committee. Now we have LC from 9/11 research created as a spinoff. I'm a little worried about all these larger groups like that have, resources and history and have some ability to, contact and to get the word out. Because I feel like it's been since 2016 or 2017 since I felt that basically they had been co-opted. I think that once you get an organization that becomes a certain level of success, I'm going to call it CIA version, the successful martyr, you're approached. And I think they've been approached, these organizations, and by their actions over those last few years, which is to say that, it's not going to be good to kill some of these people off if they're that popular already. What you want to do is get them under your wing and get them to do your, bidding, and just basically not take it too far. In other words, you've taken it to a certain point now, it's time to cool it. You can keep doing what you do, but there's going to be some rules here. You're going to have to, when we actually have a thing, you can actually, or you come up with an idea, or somebody comes up with an idea, it's really going to grow the movement. Guess what? You're going to tell you don't do that one. You got to do these other things that keep you kind of basically stagnant. I've seen that in all these different groups. I won't go into the details of what those events and things are, but and people, but basically, I think what we need outside of that to be able to get people to want to become involved and interested in 9/11 truth again is giving them something to put their hat on when it comes to what happened with the the two big towers, and similar as they have done with 7, World Trade Center 7. So we have not done that as a movement. We talk about, well, yeah, you can just see it's a demolition, and there's 60 exhibits of most likely controlled demolition coming out of the lawyers committee. But it's people know that we're saying, yeah, they were demolished. But then when we say, well, how's it done? We're a mess. I mean, it's been an official mess as to the different approaches and different way it's been packaged as to how the towers were actually brought down. It's non-existent, and if it isn't existent, it's been a big mess, and it continues to be very messy. So I hope we can get that ironed out somehow. But again, that's something I think the CIA is not going to allow us to come up with something really good about how the towers were brought down. I think that's going too far, because that will get the interest. Nothing else. 7, nobody cares about 7. Nobody cares really about the Pentagon. Nobody cares about Shanksville, but they did care about the towers when they came down. And that's why 9/11 was about the towers being demolished. That's really what started it and what finished it and what keeps it going today. but you're not allowed to talk about, of course, the demolition, only the, you know, you're
The
not
shock
allowed-
and awe, the shock and awe.
the shock and awe, bringing you to your knees when those towers actually came unbelievably, were taken out of our lives, out of the American history. And basically one thing I'm doing with Chuckle, like I went through the Judy or the Jill Stein, Ron Paul. I've been through all that and others, you know, but now I'm thinking that it's more about what you got to do is, you know, realize that we can make the change happen. What we just got to do is get rid of our dependence on the US dollar. That's their control. That's why we have the comfort. That's why we have the Stockholm syndrome. It's like, well, you know, these people, they may be bad, but man, the dollar's coming when I follow them, you know, and you got to be able to get outside of your comfort zone and say, how can I slow down my use of the dollar? That's really something all of us can do. You know, you don't have to get off the dollar completely, but you really need to think about how can I reduce and slow down my speed and my use of the dollar. And that will lead you directly to preserving the environment. Because also one of the things that burns, the dollar burns up, and I call 9/11 the Holocaust and the humanicide, is this burning up of the environment that goes along with the development, the mortgage-backed securities, the bailouts that end up causing all this development around the world that has been really not good development over the last, especially over the last decade, really destroying nature, destroying habitat. Forget about global warming. That's a little bit of a sideshow, a little bit of a distraction. The real problem is destroying the habitat and not giving a damn about it anywhere you go. It's like, oh, we're building this building. We're putting down this concrete parking lot. We're putting in Wendy's. We're putting in McDonald's. And we've been doing that for decades, but it's gotten at a very hyper pace, you know, real estate development with tract housing going everywhere. And we've forgotten where we came from. You know, of course, we destroyed the buffalo years ago. I think it wasn't because of their religion or their ethnic group. It was because they didn't want the pioneers, the European pioneers going out there and actually adopting the Indian lifestyle out on the plains rather than the US government, European, you know, lifestyle. So yeah, kill the buffalo and everybody's gonna get beef and cattle. And the Indian lifestyle, they'll be brought to their knees. So anyway, one thing I'm doing, and I've been compromised, I think maybe some of us I think aren't aware of it. I'm building the Twin Towers again as an environmental, you know, I think they need to be rebuilt as environmental hospitals, eco hospitals. It's because they're the most efficient buildings ever built to this day. Ground floor square footage versus usable square footage above. So I'm rebuilding the towers in that vein in different uses in different sizes. I got a you know, a GoFundMe page. You search Twin Towers. You got me, and then you got a guy that calls himself Osama bin Laden. Literally, it's true. On GoFundMe, Twin Towers, you'll get this guy Osama bin Laden wants to rebuild the real towers. So anyway, so you get your gaslighting going all over the place. But these towers I got now, I got the donation money from a private source. $10,000, which is enough for me to do one set of these towers. And you know, those people, whoever they were, I can't tell you who they were, but they're not even interested on what the progress is. They could care, they just like, they gave the money, all in cash, all just one thing. And now I've been giving them updates, trying to give them updates. Here's what I'm doing, you know, now it's coming along, da da da. Not a single company, they just care less. That's a little suspicious to me. It's like, but what it does do to me is it burns up all my time. I mean, I'm going to be building these concrete towers for, you know, that's where I'm spending the majority of my time, not on the street doing activism, down at Ground Zero, for example, down at the memorial. But the tower, I'll just end because Chuck will like it. So this towers, and I'm doing the 30-foot tall ones that I got the money for, they're going to be endangered mushroom spawn incubators. And what that means is I'm going to find, I don't know which mushrooms need to be protected, but I can guarantee you there's going to be some that need to be protected or need to be, you know, in a hospital to survive. And I'm going to find out somebody who knows what those might be. And we're going to be growing that spawn inside the towers. It's because it's a perfect environment for that type of thing. If you know anything about mushroom spawn, other things you can do in these towers So beehives, water capture, all water storage. There's a lot of great things that can be done on a smaller scale, but they get noticed, and it puts them to that new use, that new future, that and then keeps the attention on the towers in a way that is
Thank you.
positive. So I'm
Thank-
gonna end.
Yeah,
I'll end with that.
Yeah, we do have other people with their hands raised. So let's
Well,
give
thank you.
Chuck and Trina a chance to respond.
I just wanted to say quickly about the dollar and getting off the dollar. You know, when we look back in time here, the early 1900s, we could buy things at the store for pennies. Now we're going to the store and we're buying the same thing for $20. You know, a few years down the road from now, it'll be $40. The housing market is almost pricing people, normal, regular people, out of the market from ever having home ownership. That, and then the environment. When I moved to where I live, there were probably a dozen at least citrus farms, citrus groves all around me. Every single one of them are now gone. It's speaking to the environment. So it's just it's terrible what they're doing to humanity. So okay, that's all I got. Thank you.
Jean is up next, but did Chuck want to respond first?
No, I'm going to listen and I'm going to peel off in a few minutes, but I'd like to hear from Jean but I will be peeling off, and I really appreciate the conversation. And you know, I invite we need to build collaborations and partnerships. And you know, if you know, the prospect of appealing to the Green Party in Boston at the national, you know, a collective letter calling for investigations, I think would be a fun, exciting, you know, easy to do, you know, solidarity statement, so on. So just a thought, we can, you know, work around that. This would be a tap. It could be a tap Green Liberty, you know, we could have a multi, but okay, food for thought. But go ahead, let's hear from Jean or Sandra. I think it's Jean.
Thanks, Chuck. I just wanted to thank Boston 9/11 Truth for having Trina and Chuck on. Thank you both for being stalwarts of 9/11 TAP, or Truth Action Project now that it's called. I know we have the purists in the 9/11 Truth movement, but I do appreciate what you guys are doing and venturing out with bridging on other things. And it's more of a comment than anything that you guys are creating a culture where 9/11 Truth can then talk amongst other groups. And I think it's really important. It's not exactly my cup of tea. I kind of like to stay in my lane, 9/11 Truth, but I do appreciate what you do. And we all do our own. I know you're doing the campfire chats. That's great. Wish everybody could make everybody's calls, but there's just not so many. There's not enough hours in a day.
I
But
understand.
just if you guys could speak on that, creating a culture for us to bridge out.
Thank you. Chuck?
Well, that's absolutely right. And, you know, when we have our forums, we've kind of taken a break this summer, but it's a clearing where we, you know, it's free form, and, you know, we have our topics. But I think inevitably in these conversations, 9/11 is woven back in. And I think, and we understand how foundational the 9/11 event has been, because many of us remember it and are, you know, I mean, I'm interested in JFK and hearing from people, what do you remember? I was a child or an infant and have no memory of those events, but it is in our memory. So
It's also
you know,
foundational to TAP
it's
9/11.
foundational. Yeah. So, you know, I think TAP's role in all of this is to be a clearing in a space. And I think, you know, we're totally in solidarity with all things 9/11 Truth. And but then we're also, and I'll close with this. The guy who was the guy who led the 9/11 Commission, the assignment from the Bush administration, Zelikow. Zelikow you see these deep state operators that were active for 9/11. They have roles and duties under the COVID program. So this is what Dale Scott Pierce called the continuity of government. These are all connected. So I think the critical thing is that we be tolerant of, critical viewpoints and focus on what's important. And I think what's important is finding our common ground and our agreement and consensus to fight back, and finding ways to fight back. And if it means running a block, that's one way. Communicating, letter writing campaigns, protesting, all the First Amendment stuff, and more is really what we need to be doing. And we need a concerted program. And I guess so. The idea of TAP being a hub of a connector, and so that people aren't in their silo, they're doing their activism, and that activism feeds the consciousness of the whole truth movement, and we spread in that way, and we build our movement. I think that's kind of what TAP's trying to do.
Thank you. Well said.
Okay.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Gene.
Thank you both.
Hey,
I guess I'm the last person to have my hand raised.
you are.
I just wanted to roll back to legislation.
Yeah.
And, one initiative that we did have back in 2013 was the Citizens Campaign Commission for 9/11, headed by Mike Gravel. And unfortunately, that failed. It was a ballot initiative. Ballot initiatives are extremely difficult and expensive. But we did get approved. We got through the first hurdle of, the Attorney General putting the stamp of approval that we can go out to the 14 counties and start collecting signatures. So that was a big hurdle that we overcame. But the money issue and the logistics issue ended up ending the campaign before we could get the signatures. So that was a difficulty. The other issue we had is we really didn't know if we should get this passed, what was our end game? How would this Massachusetts 9/11 Commission really look? How would it be really conducted? Nobody had ever quite figured that out. Who would testify? It had to be impartial. Yet everybody wanted just the 9/11 truthers testifying, which isn't really cricket, in a legislative way. So I just wanted to mention that. The second thing I wanted to roll back to, so the first one is an open-ended question. Is this worth trying again better? I don't know. The second thing I wanted to address was getting back, like I said, I wanted to get back to it. The 1947, tell me again.
National Security Act.
National Security Act. That shouldn't be hard to remember. If there was a campaign to Congress critters and candidates with a pre-written draft of what the legislation could look like to override this, is that something worth pursuing? And if so, I would really like to help.
I think on that note, I'm going to leave. But let me just remark. I mean, that's a great question because, it could be responded, the whole National Security Act is this, labyrinthine, complicated, and you would have to include the Patriot Act and all of these things in between, because it basically set the stage for national security surveillance state. And I think
It's my understanding that the CIA and the president can make, or the president can make our security decisions, is my understanding of the act.
correct. It's
It also
basically
rolls in the NDAA 2012.
Right, yes.
and
which
and
we
and all
really
of these
got a
other
lot of likes on.
agencies have been created, spawned, national security, NSA, and all these things. So really the question is, and that the question that you're posing is worthy of a truth commission, a truth conference, because, if that's a point of, if we all agree that the National Security Act has, spawned a CIA that's gone rogue and, we allege has committed, these crimes around 9/11. And I mean, I don't do the Israeli did it to us camp. I accept that Israel is an agent of the military-industrial complex, but I'm a native thinker here and think that essentially the Americans did it to themselves, and certainly probably hired Israelis to come in and do some of the work, but in the end, our movement shouldn't get distracted by he said, she said. But to go back to 1947, the problem of that, and then the real question is, what is a humanitarian society? What does their national security look like? And how is that national security accomplished in a world where we're not trying to build empire? Because that's it's contradictory, really. The National Security Act is building national security, but it's actually building empire. And empire puts the nation at risk of nuclear retaliation, nuclear strike. The guys who are getting beat up fight back. I mean, there's a whole argument of that the militarism goes against constitutional provision, the guarantee clause. This is Michael Diamond at National our Renaissance movement. Basically, these are good arguments, and I think so, Susan. I think hold that thought, and that would be another good project. And TAP would be delighted to participate with the 9/11 Truth, movement, and hold a conference on that question. And we'd have to be. I mean, I know people that we could bring in. I mean, Jeremy Kruzmarov is active at Covert Action, and he's a wonderful individual. Very smart, but these are, I think, the thing is, how do we undo multiple generations of national security buildup that's created a monster?
Right. Very good.
Yeah.
Just a quick comment on that. I've heard that the NSA is so convoluted at this point that trying to completely remove it would destroy this country. So it's almost become like a cancer where it's entrenched, where we do need certain parts of it, but there is so much corruption from rogue agents and rogue policies and whatnot that it's kind of like if you try to take that out, you're going to kill the whole thing and hurt the country.
Well, it's a great conference. It's a great.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is good. This is what the truth movement has to offer. The country, our conversations, and no one's brought up what you just kind of posed, Susan, and I think it's a worthwhile thing, but we need to get some really smart historian types to come in, but they're available. I know. Hold that thought. Let's develop it. I mean, maybe we do some kind of conference on this.
I just
Do
want
you know? Wait, do you what?
I just want to move it beyond talking to ourselves.
Yes, agreed.
I think what we and so TAP does forums, and
Building
we
the
invite the
movement.
public to come in, and we advertise, and sometimes this idea of building a block means we have to bring in people from the left and the right, and because we're not going to build a movement unless it's left and right. And so what are the common points of agreement? Well, a big part, I think there's a lot of common agreement that the United States is not just an innocent little country. It's become into a full-blown imperial empire, and it has and that's a serious problem for the country to be empire in a world that doesn't want single empire. It wants, now we're into, global politics and stuff. But I think that's what the truth, I think that's what, so yeah, we don't want to just talk to each other. We want to talk and build our audience. We're in agreement on that. So let's work towards that. Let's build let's expand our
Well, if
media.
it takes legislation to combat this, then let's move towards legislation.
Well, I would definitely, in terms of, advancing this block or political truth or block, one of the planks would be, taking on this issue of national security state and how that corrupts the republic and gets us off the mark, puts us on to, we deny the needs of people and nature when we build empire.
Mhm.
Walk the plank, arr.
Okay, here you go.
Pirate party.
All right, you guys.
I
Hey,
need
I'm
my
gonna,
patch now. Yeah, I
okay.
need to go too as well. So thank you all for,
Okay,
so
for,
much.
I'll
for
let you guys.
hosting us.
You guys can set your agenda for next time. All right. Okay.
Good
Peace
night,
out.
Chuck.
Thank
Talk
you,
to you
thank
later.
you.
So
Good night,
much.
Trina.
Very
Okay,
much
bye-bye.
appreciated.
You're
It's fun.
welcome. Thanks for having us.
All right.
Thank you, Jane. I see you over there. Have a good evening.
Oh,
I wanted to see them. Okay, but now I don't know if you want to be seen vaping.
Uh-oh. I can hear you.